Hey guys, welcome back to the Catechists in Quarantine. Thanks for your patience with me. I know I missed last week, but I'd love to catch back up this week talking about the Catechism, the development of it in the early church, and situating ourselves right now at St. John's in this big context of catechesis right now in the church. So I'd also love to talk about the Baltimore Catechism and share my thoughts about that with you. So catechesis in the early church really started off not as a textbook, but just as baptism prep in the form of speeches. St. Augustine had some that he first, then later published. But before that, there was really no text used. And adults that were baptized into the church would then homeschool their own kids and families. So there was never any CCD programs like we have today. Maybe the best thing of an actual written down catechism were actually the cathedrals themselves. The architecture, the stained glass windows, the oil paintings, the carvings. Those just, you would see the entire, it's like an entire compendium of the Catholic faith on the walls of these cathedrals, like the Cathedral of Cologne, Milan, of Brussels. People didn't need to know how to read in order to be catechized back then. Then you've also got some people like St. Thomas Aquinas, who, a monk that left these immense masterpieces of theological systematics for us to use that treat theology like a science. That's helped us a lot. But largely, catechisms came around in response to attacks on the faith. One big one was the Protestant Reformation in the 1500s with Martin Luther, when he made some different, published his contentions about the church. And that led to the splitting off of many different sects of Protestants, breaking away from the church. The church then responded in its counter-reformation with the Council of Trent, kind of like we had the Vatican II, Second Vatican Council, same thing, but just way back then, Council of Trent. And one of the fruits of that was to write a catechism universally for the church. It was called the Roman Catechism, or the Catechism of the Council of Trent, to help institute and unify the language that we use. It's objective, it's some reference text that we can use to refute heresy and guard the faith. Guard the deposit, like we said that last time. And also as a fruit of that, though, was the call for each country or each diocese to come up with their own national or local catechisms. And not just for everybody in the church to use the universal text. So one of these smaller catechisms that spawned off of that was the Baltimore Catechism. It was based off of the Council of Trent, and we all know it as the question and answer format. The what is the purpose of man? It's to know, love, and serve God in this world and be happy with Him forever in the next. These textbook phrases and that everybody memorized, and they were very clear and concise with certain words that we all knew what they meant and we could all define them. That was the atmosphere of the character of the Baltimore Catechism. So from the 1890s all the way through to the 1960s, that was the standard national textbook in American churches and schools. But throughout the 1900s, in the 1930s, we really started seeing lots of people leaving the church because of secular influences. Modern philosophies of Marxism, socialism, materialism got more ingrained. And people were criticizing the Baltimore Catechism for being irrelevant, just not caring about it, especially for being dry or monotonous. So it created this dichotomy of people in the church that were in favor of good content in their catechesis, and on the other side, people who were in favor of good presentation. So you had the anti-Baltimore Catechism people that were all about having a more attractive, kind of fun, engaging, entertaining catechesis, and on the other hand, people who we're really trying to defend the Baltimore Catechism because it had the best content, and we don't want to risk losing any of the content just for the sake of having a more attractive show. When Vatican II came around, that dichotomy got even split more because a lot of people felt that the changes that Vatican II instituted in the Mass, for instance, like the language of the Mass changing from Latin to then being available in English, meant that the Church was changing its stance on everything, and especially catechesis and moral teachings. And so people took that as an incentive to create a ton of new catechetical materials, saying this is the way catechesis should be. We think we have this group, we think we have a better version of presenting the catechism than the Baltimore or than any of the other ones. And it's led right now to what Pope Benedict XVI, before he was Pope, called a time of crisis of the faith. He says that one no longer has the courage to present the faith as an organic whole in itself. Because anything that sounds like we're treating catechesis systematically sounds like the Baltimore Catechism, sounds like the old way, the bad way, the traditional way that's not new. And right now, I can tell you all that that's still kind of the feel that I get. Shannon warned me that around this time of year, as DRE, I'm going to be getting tons of phone calls and mailings and emails from different Catholic publishers trying to get me to buy their products for the next year, like trying to convince me that their series of textbooks on catechesis are the best ones for our parish. And, each one's got its pros and cons, and I've started really looking at them all. I talked to a guy on the phone yesterday for an hour about a new one. And it's great. I can see how it's tempting to consider all these things. But Father Jeremy told me, he introduced me to the Baltimore Catechism. And he told me that he personally thinks there's been nothing better since then. Like, the Baltimore Catechism was the tried and true method for over 60 years. And all the new ones, maybe some of them help rectify some of the weaknesses of the Baltimore Catechism, but none of them are better. And none of them are as good as the Baltimore Catechism in one particular thing that we need a lot of right now, which is clarity in our language. He told me that it's so hard for him sometimes to preach because he doesn't know what the congregation knows, what each member of the congregation, will think about when they hear a certain word, like they hear the word grace or the word sacrament or the word church or morality. What we don't have the same education, and so much of our CCD is just, it changes from year to year. It's just kind of generally talking about God and the church, but it's not systematic. And so it doesn't lead to a unified whole, to a robust language that we can all gather around and really something consistent that we can build on. So I've been really looking at all the different models now of different books and textbook series. And I wanted to show you guys what I think is really cool about the Baltimore Catechism and see what you guys think. I think, as just in principle, it's the simplest. It's got the least amount of overhead. It's the cheapest. You just get a book for the teacher and that's it. Chalk and chalkboard, everybody in a seat, and and there you go. You're going to win souls. That's the model. The teacher just has to, read the lesson beforehand, and there's an accompanying book that's contained within the Baltimore Catechism. It's the adult or teacher's version. It's got the extended, kind of explanations of the questions and answers that are in each of the students' chapters. And if you just read through that, it's only a few pages each chapter, and it really dives into some concise theology. It's just really helpful words, and they go right to the meat. And the questions too are straightforward, just cut straight to the chase, And so I think the simplicity there is really attractive. Also, the flexibility. You don't need to teach. It's so easy for you to teach the Baltimore Catechism however you want, because there's nothing there that they've kind of thrown at you. Like in all these other textbooks, they fill it with other pre-planned activities and ideas and games, and it's great. But sometimes when we've had so many of these ideas thrown at us, it actually stunts our creativity, or our creative ideas don't ever go to the depth of our own personal witness and testimony, which is really the gold. Like if we're just, sitting here with just the Baltimore Catechism, we've got the few questions and answers, we get a sense of what topic the chapter is going off of. We can then teach that however we want, and we were called to do it from scratch, which is really awesome. And to me seems very Christ-like, is doing it from scratch, prioritizing the personal witness that we can give to the kids, saying, just by our presence, that what we're teaching is the truth. Father Jeremy also told me that that's really the most important part in catechism. That you, as a catechist, and me, you guys are the most interesting thing in there and the most valuable thing. Not any book, not any program, not any activity. It's you and how much you care about it. So the Baltimore Catechism kind of forces us to prepare well and be serious about it and care about it. And it goes straight to the meat. That's what's great. You don't waste any time at all. For instance, in the section when it talks about sacraments and grace, it goes into, I'll just read you some of these questions, really. It goes into so much depth and application on how we live our relationship, how we live the relationship between the sacraments and grace. So we all know, we could probably say that sacraments are one of the primary ways that God gives us grace, confers grace on us. But we probably wouldn't say it about it in the same way because we've all been taught differently with different textbooks and methods to define sacraments differently, which is not very helpful, not necessarily a bad thing. But I just love this chapter from the Baltimore Catechism. This is what it says. First question of the chapter: what is a sacrament? And the answer is: a sacrament is an outward sign instituted by Christ to give grace. That's great. That's probably in the least amount of words possible how you would differentiate a sacrament from anything else. So it's just very useful to have such a concise definition. But it doesn't just stop there. Sadly, I read the corresponding version. This is the fourth through 6th, 7th, 8th grade version of the Baltimore Catechism. I read the corresponding one online for the Sadlier version on the Our Catholic Faith book for grades 4 through 6. It sort of stops there. It doesn't even use the word grace when it talks about sacraments in that chapter. And it doesn't go even further like the Baltimore Catechism does when the next question is, where have the sacraments the power of giving grace? Like, why do sacraments give us grace? What's their authority? Like, dang, that's a great question. If just the fact that that's in this book means that it's taking this super seriously to the point of like philosophically dissecting it. Like we're taking it seriously. This is not just like fluff here. And the answer is the sacraments have the power of giving grace because of the merits of Jesus Christ. That's awesome. And you might have someone ask, what are the merits of Jesus Christ? And then that's gold. Like, that's a great question. That cuts straight to the meat. And uses these great theological words. It's not fluff at all. I just love it. Then this next question. What grace do the sacraments give? Think about that. Well, there are multiple types of grace. Like, did you guys even know that? I barely have even heard much or learned much about it, but that's why I like to study the Baltimore Catechism, because now I know the answer is some of the sacraments give sanctifying grace and others increase it in our souls. And the next question, okay, so which are the sacraments that give sanctifying grace? Good, logical, next consecutive question. The answer is the sacraments that give sanctifying grace are baptism and penance, and they are called sacraments of the dead. Oh, and well, great. Look at the next question. Very logical. Why are baptism and penance called sacraments of the dead? Baptism and penance are called sacraments of the dead because they take away sin, which is the death of the soul, and give grace, which is its life. And it even goes further. It makes really concrete the connection between mortal sin, the inability for us to receive the Eucharist. Why? Because we've committed this mortal sin. Why is it called mortal? Because it killed something in our soul. What has it killed? It's killed the sanctifying grace. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Like that, we have words for the realities that we're living. Oh, why didn't I ever learn that before? Like all the other CCD stuff was just talking about vague words to try to describe the same thing, but it didn't have terms for it, and it didn't go systematically through each of the logical steps. Talk about thinking that the church is full of arbitrary devotions and rules when you've never learned why. And this is where it is. The gold is right here in the Baltimore Catechism. So if I've committed a mortal sin, what do I do? Well, it's pretty reasonable. I need to give life back to my soul. Okay, how do I do that? I can go to the sacraments that are made for dead souls. Oh, for the souls that are in a state of death. Okay, the sacraments of the dead, which are those? Baptism and penance. All right, well, baptism I've already gotten, so penance is the one that I need, confession. if I'm in the state of moral sin, I need to confess those sins. That then gives me sanctifying grace again, which I had none of left in my soul. Mortal sin got rid of it. And then, so then what does the Eucharist do when I receive communion? If I've already gone to confession and I have the grace, what is it? No, it increases the store of sanctifying grace. And so, all right, like it just makes sense. Whereas the Sadlier version does not go anywhere near as in depth about that in such a logical way. I just think in the end, those are the things that we're going to remember. That I think being entertained or having a good presentation in our catechesis is not as important as making sure that we're giving the students the logic of the faith, making sure they know that the faith makes sense and it's built consistently off of principles that relate to our lived experience. Even if they are bored by it, they can't throw it away as something that doesn't relate to reality. They'll always come back to it because of that, not because it was fun. Fun can get swept away by something that's more fun. But when you've found the truth and you know that something makes sense and has reasons, and it's just that you don't like it and you decide not to live it, that sticks with you forever in your conscience, and you can always come back to it. But if you've never been given, you've never been shown that the Catholic faith is reasonably and consistently built on this beautiful systematic structure of truths, that deposit of faith that we're guarding, it's so easy to fall away and never come back because we don't see the point. We're all looking for truth in our life, something that lasts, something that holds water. And if we've never been given that in catechism because the teachers were afraid of it being boring, we've just lost souls. So I just want to leave you guys that. Let me know what you think. And I'm just really excited to keep this conversation going about reflecting on catechism, especially preparing for next year at St. John's. Hope you guys are surviving the heat and taking advantage of the fact that masses are now open. You can go to Father Jeremy's Sunday Masses at the parish 9 o'clock on Sunday mornings, and also check the parish website for the calendar. That shows all the weekday masses too. So take care. God bless. I'll see you next time.